Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a Blade Dancer build in patch 8 of Baldur's Gate 3, combining the Blade Singing Wizard alongside the Light Domain Cleric. We're an offensive support style class that's great for debuffing the enemy, but we also have a lot of defensive abilities to keep our allies safe. With this, we're going to be going with the Wizard first, as I find it's good to start off with obviously Booming Blade being such a very powerful spell, especially as you scale up to level 5 and 6. Then we also got Mage Hand here and Bone Chill. Mage Hand's good because you can use this to throw health potions and also water bottles to set up double cold and lightning damage. And we also got Bone Chill here to be able to apply a debuff to the enemy so they can't receive healing. We also want to take for spells. I like the Mage Armor and Shield spells. This just gives us the kind of Blade Dancer to kind of a defensive style class that's going to have a good armor class, and Shield helps by increasing that by 5. And then Mage Armor will set our base AC to 13 plus our Dexterity modifier, which is really great because we'll likely be using ropes for a good portion of the early game. And Grease, Thunderwave. I like Sleep early game as a good choice because you can put 3 goblins to sleep. And then also Magic Missile. Although if you don't want to take the sleep spell, you can go with Long Strider to buff up the team. And for our ability scores, now we do require a bit of dip into 2 different stats here. So this stat spread can work. However, we're lucky in the fact that there's an item that sets our intelligence, our constitution, and our dexterity to a set level. So once we get to later sections of the game, actually in the early game, Act 1 has the dexterity gauntlets, which sets our dexterity to 18. And then there's also the intelligence circlet, which sets our intelligence to 17. And then late games is a constitution amulet, which would be the best in slot because this lets us keep our other stats high. Otherwise, if you don't want to use those stat dropping or boosting items, you go with a stat spread of this. And whatever stat you're going to jump, you're going to put the rest of the points elsewhere. So I like to have 16 dex and 16 intelligence with 14 wisdom. Level 2, we'll take the Blade Singing Wizard, which then gives us our Blade Song, which will increase our armor class, which is amazing. We also then get to take spells. I like the Chromatic Orb for coverage, damage types, and then False Life to give ourselves temporary health. For the Blade Singing Weapon, this just gives you a free weapon. It doesn't really matter too much. And then for the prepared spells, I like to always have Shield and Magic Missile on. Grease is great for crowd control, Magic Missile, and Thunderwave. Once we get to level 3, though, we get some more powerful spells with high priority being Hold Person here. This can hold an enemy in place, and then critical hits will automatically occur when we attack within 3 meters. And Scorching Ray is extremely powerful as well. This also lets us go ahead here. I would recommend Scorching Ray for a bit of spell casting damage, and then next level we can take Hold Person. Once we get to level 4, however, we get our first feat. We can also take another cantrip. I like Firebolt to explode things, and if you're the face of the party, Friends is good too. Minor Illusion's another good support spell. And then we're going to go with, I guess, Darkness can be good if you want to use Darkness gear in Act 2. There's the Eversight Ring. I'm not going to use it for this build, but that is a good kind of defensive way to build around this. Shadowblade's really strong. We're going to be it's the strongest weapon in the game by far. I'm not going to use it for this build. I just feel like it doesn't fit the blade dancing theme very well here. So Mirror Image for the +9 to armor class is pretty good defensively, as mentioned. That's kind of we're an offensive support with some pretty good defenses ourselves. For the first feat, the Alert is such a good one to have. This makes sure that we go first in combat, and that's something we definitely want to do, especially as we get to higher levels. Level 5 gives us our very powerful counter spell. Save your reaction for this as much as you can. Don't use the Illithid Charm. Save it for counter spell, to be honest. This is such a good spell that it will save so many different things from happening. This is one of the reasons that I want to multi-classes, because we're going to take some good things from the Cleric as well. And then we also get options of like the Glyph of Warding we'll get from the Cleric. Haste is a good one. I also like to just go with Thunderbolt, Lightning Bolt here because this has a huge area of effect, and you can actually proc a bunch of other gear as well that we'll have at this point. And then I always have Counterspell prepared and Lightning Bolt just for a bit of extra damage. Into level 6, we get our extra attack. It's pretty big. We then get to choose another spell, Fear being a pretty useful one, and Haste. For the spells we'll prepare, I think it's good to go with, it's nice to have Haste or Fear there. Mirror Image actually was probably the best one, with Misty Step being kind of second place. And once we get to level 7, this is when we're going to multi-class and add in the Cleric. And this is actually really nice because this gives us, so I was thinking about using the Defensive Duelist perk, which is great. However, with the Light Domain, we actually get a much better ability with our Warding Flare. So this uses a reaction to turn an attack from advantage or normal attack into disadvantage, making them roll 2 die and they take the lower result. So this is really good for reducing the amount of damage that we'll be taking overall. Much better than Defensive Duelist adding a 4 to our armor class. Plus, when we already have the shield spell, I was just trying to think of some ways to make it feel a little bit more thematic, but we're going to want to have Produce Flame because you can hold this and have a light in your hand. I also like Toll the Dead. That's not a bad spell overall. Just extra damage. Guidance, Resistance. Actually, Sacred Flame's probably a better choice to go with here. And then for our prepared spells, I like to have Create or Destroy Water, especially on a caster that can double the chain lightning, things like that. And then we're going to go with Command, and Bless is great to have, but I like to have the healing word there. So it just gives us some extra support. If we have downed allies, we can pick them up as a bonus action. Level 2 gives us our Radiance of the Dawn, huge area of effect lighting. That'll remove magical darkness. This is great if you're getting overwhelmed in certain fights. And then we'll take Sanctuary there, huge defensive boosting spell. Level 3 gives us our Scorching Ray, which we already have from the Wizard, but that's not a huge deal there. You can learn a lot of spells from the Wizard. What's nice about this is we can unprepare that and take it now. Now we also get access to Hold Person, which we can take from the Wizard. What's nice about this is we can actually take some spells from the Cleric, although it's going to have one less spell save DC. Not a huge deal, because we can use something like the Hat of Fire Acuity to get a +10 to our spell save DC, and that +1 difference is a lot more minuscule whenever you get that +10. But for the prepared spells, I think that something like this, adding a spiritual weapon, because you can use the Maul. The Maul can daze enemies, giving them disadvantage on Hold Person and Command, which gives us even further control over the battlefield. Now we also get an option of another cantrip here, and we get a feat. Now as mentioned, I like the Defensive Duelist doesn't fit here. You can add in heavy armor proficiency, but that doesn't fit the dancer role either. The Savage Attacker, never a bad idea for rerolling damage die. We're kind of a support, kind of hybrid. We are going to do melee attacks, but we also have spell casting too. So at this point, it's probably best to go with a increase to our dexterity, because this is going to give us a bit more survivability. If you have the dex gauntlets on, put that into your constitution or into your intelligence. But I think that increasing our dex here is likely our best option, because this gives us more initiative, another armor class point. It's just a really good choice to go with something like that here to round ourselves out a little bit more in the mental or the physical side, even though we're a spellcaster as well. Levels here, we get very powerful spell, Spirit Guardians. This is going to be something we want to have our concentration on, because we have so many different pieces of gear that can proc benefits off of this, and then we can basically shut down the enemies and buff up our team quite a bit too. I also like to have Mass Healing Word here, but Glyph of Warding is another good choice in spells. Since we didn't get the increase in our Cleric level, we only can prepare so many spells. But on our final level, we get this very powerful ability with the improved Warding Flare. When I was trying to craft together a Blade Dancer, I wanted to use a sword. But the big problem here is you do want to be able to protect your team as well. It doesn't really matter a whole lot if you can protect yourself, as your entire team needs that extra benefit. So the improved Warding Flare, I feel like, fits very well with this. We can spellcast, but we also got a lot of blade abilities. For our last prepared spell, Glyph of Warning is a good one to take there. Revivify as well if you need it. You can always prepare that as you do need it. I should have mentioned that you can take the Dual Wielder feat instead of going with the Dexterity increase. This lets you use Falder Alluve alongside Corallan's Laurentian's Wrath, which are two swords that are finesse long swords. So we'll use your Dexterity-based score on that. I think that works well, but we can alternatively go this route here. Depends if you want to use the Blade Song. Now, the problem is, if we want to use the best armor for this build, we can't Blade Sing. So that kind of removes that. So I like to use the shield. And this also opens us up to using different weapons too if we want. But from the top, I guess the Hat of Fire Acuity is my choice here, because this allows us to do our Scorching Rays. And if we cast 5 of these, this will give us our Arcane Acuity for 10 turns, which then allows us to cast any of our spells and we'll land them all pretty much immediately. This is also a good choice if you want it, or there's another good choice with the Holy Lance Helm. This is medium armor. And whenever you get attacked, and if the attacker misses, you can attack with radiant damage, which will further proc our abilities here, which applies radiating orbs whenever we do we have all the radiating orb gear. I don't know if you've used them before, but these are really powerful abilities that gives -10 to the enemy's attack rolls alongside our Warding Flare. This is a really powerful build to protect our team with. And yeah, we're going to use, I guess, the Coruscation Ring, which will apply radiating orbs whenever we do a spell damage. So our Scorching Rays, not only do we get a +10 spell save DC, we apply -10 to the enemy's attack rolls because we do 2 turns of radiating orbs per blast. It's crazy. Then we also have the Callous Glow Ring, which will do additional 2 points of damage against targets that are illuminated. And what's even crazier is this is 2 radiant damage points, which means that it also reprocs our other items here, like the Luminous Gloves. Whenever we deal radiant damage, the target receives 2 turns of radiating orb. Luminous Armor, whenever we deal radiant damage, we create Radiant Shockwave, which does a 3-meter area of effect of radiating orbs. So any enemies that are in that area can actually get hit multiple times by that. And then we also have the Thunderskin Cloak here. It's actually a really good cloak for this because whenever an enemy with reverberation attacks us, we can make them dazed. Dazed means they have disadvantage on wisdom saves, so we can land Hold Person and Command, which are our 2 best crowd control spells that we want to land. And that's kind of the whole reason for the Hat of Fire Acuity. But reverberation comes from our Boots of Stormy Clamor. Whenever we stack a condition on the enemy, our radiating orbs, we also stack reverberation. You can use the evasive shoes, but this is all geared like in Act 1 that you can this build can come alive like Act 1 and Act 2 when you get the helmet. Crazy. Now for a Blade Dancer, we're going to use the Fowler Alluve weapon here. I did experiment around using like Dolar Amaris and then having like the Cold Snap in the offhand or having Belm in the offhand, because Belm will actually give you a bonus action attack, which is really nice. You can use those, and then with the dual wielder feat, my actual preference with the dual wielder would be the Fowler Alluve and then Laurentian's Wrath, as those two weapons are really good. But I want Fowler Alluve as this Act 1 item that has the melody here, which lets us sing and buff our teammates. And I actually prefer the Shriek, which does additional damage to the enemy and can also set up some extra benefits for us here. So I think that ends up being the best choice here. Knife the Undermounted King is another good one, especially if you want to use Knife the Undermounted King alongside like the Dolar Amaris there for some smaller short sword type combat. But I personally think that going with this setup is really good. Laconia is Walking Fortress. And again, you can take the dual wielder feat and use the 2 long swords if you prefer. And we're not going to use our bow at all, so let's take the Hell Rider longbow for that +3 to initiative. With Alert, we are going to be going first. And then I'll show you, I guess, combat here. What we want to do is, if you know you're getting into a fight, cast Spirit Guardians and your Shrieking Song before getting into a fight. A little trick is you can actually upcast your Spirit Guardians and then use your Arcane Recovery. I guess we can. We could just use a regular Spirit Guardians level 3 to recover that spell slot. So right away, we can actually apply Reverberation easily because the Shrieking Song will actually apply the reverberation, and it's got a large area of effect. And then we go in with our Spirit Guardians. Spirit Guardians are pretty strong. As you can see there, we did our radiant damage, and then we got extra radiant damage. Then applied 5 turns of radiating orbs on this enemy here, which is great because then we're going to be applying a lot of statuses back to back. Now, what's kind of cool about, well, yeah, that happens. Sometimes you can train and react with that. I'm actually going to turn Call the Weak off now because it is extremely powerful with Call the Weak. But here alone, we can even just eat opportunity attacks. I think it's worth doing that just because he has a -2 to his attack rolls, but now there's -6 on this enemy here. That enemy has -6. You can just run around setting up the radiating orbs and taking enemies out alternatively. So that's 4 stacked radiating orbs. The luminous armor being able to proc it on multiple enemies is pretty crazy. So yeah, now everything has 6 radiating orbs on it. That's exactly what we want. I don't even care to eat the opportunity attack. That's fine by me. They rolled a critical hit, and that's what Warding Flare is for, turning it into a critical miss instead. That was absurdly good luck. And yeah, you want to run around until everyone is affected by this. Now what you can do is, we got Scorching Ray here, and we want to ideally upcast this to level 4, because every time that we shoot out one of these, they're going to give us not only Arcane Acuity, it would get counterspelled, it would give us Arcane Acuity. I'm just going to do it again here because it's super useful. It's going to give us a boost or a spell save. It took out an enemy. It applied 10 stacks of Radiating Orbs on that enemy and 10 stacks on that enemy. This is exactly what we want because we now have a +8 from our Arcane Acuity, now putting our Wizard spells up to a spell save DC of 23 and our Cleric of 22, so very hard to resist. And then for our last action, we can use like a Pommel Strike on an enemy. I mean, it's going to potentially, yeah, do a bit of radiant damage there. And we daze the target, that's ideal. If we had an extra ring slot, the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel is great for command and hold person as a bonus action, but yeah, that's pretty crazy. A recap of the turn, we took out 5 or 6 enemies and applied 10 stacks Radiating Orbs on 3 enemies so that they now have -10 to their attack rolls. And we use our reaction on our last turn, then our turn ended, so we get a reaction back. And now we can use Improved Warding Flare to keep our team safe. This is exactly what I mean about like a Blade Dancer. It's dancing the attacks off of us and our teammates by either using the Warding Flare, Radiating Orbs, or just being a defensive powerhouse with shield in itself. But yeah, this is really strong. And what's crazier is if they get hit by if they get hit with Reverberation, it'll then deal a little bit of radiant damage to them as well, and then apply Radiating Orbs on top of it. You can see there, they're having a very hard time hitting us, and that's exactly what we want. Alright, so they missed a lot of attacks, which is perfect. As we continue to move around, we dazed enemies there. Radiating Orbs is just going to destroy them. I'm not even using Call the Weak right now, so you can see that it is really strong. The Reverberation hit him, and then there's another stat that knocked him prone. He got more Radiating Orbs off. We do have Booming Blade, though. That's going to be best for any target that's got extra health here, so that's 22 health. That finished him off. A lot of extra procs of radiant damage there. And then we can just do a regular main hand attack, because yeah, 16 plus 2 plus 2. Pretty crazy damage. Now, we also want to apply some Radiating Orbs again to the enemies that aren't affected, so this is where a nice Scorching Ray comes in handy. Or alternatively, you can then use a Fireball, since we got that from the Light Domain Cleric. Sometimes you can get lucky with hitting a Fireball off multiple targets, so I prefer to use that. Lightning Bolt being another good spell, and I didn't even go ahead with taking like a... You can learn spells from scrolls and learn like Cone of Cold and Chain Lightning and Globe of Invulnerability. Those are really good options too, but we can even just do a lot with some Scorching Rays there, because those, yeah, 10 stacks of Radiating Orbs on all the enemies. Whenever you do radiant damage, you proc the Radiating Shockwave, and with these both together with this item here and this item, because we get additional radiant damage on all of that. Now they all have -10 to their attack rolls, so yeah, we don't have to do a whole lot. That's the best thing about them being all grouped up together. We can then drop, I guess, the Spiritual Weapon Maul, even though this target's already dazed. We're doing a lot of good crowd control on the enemies. They can shoot at us all they want, but they're not very likely to hit us because, yeah, they got the -10 to their attack rolls. Or I guess it's 9 because their turn starts and they remove 1 stack. If they walk into our radius, though, they'll get another stack Radiating Orb. So melee attackers that have to go up and attack us get affected by it, which is pretty crazy. And they ran up to attack us, and they got hit with everything that we've got. But they're not landing any of those shots. That's the beautiful thing about this build. And what's even funnier is Sonic Backlash, if you got that Lithid ability, it'll also proc the radiant damage, which will apply Radiating Orbs on the enemy and in a group around them. So, yeah, it becomes really crazy fast. Yeah, that's nuts. We were able to apply reverberation and took out an enemy there. Even without, yeah, even without Call the Weak, if we had it on, it would have killed everything here. But, yeah, that's some pretty good damage that we got going on. And that's not even using our Radiance of the Dawn here, which will likely take out all these enemies here, which will dispel Magical Darkness. Burns them. It doesn't really do good damage, but it's a huge area of effect. And then for our final attack here, I guess we can just go with a regular old... We'll do Booming Blade there. 1 health point. I guess there is one more attacker left here. They're hiding, but we can still find them, and boom. Since we got... we applied another Radiating Orb off on that. That was pretty good. What's even crazier is Magic Missile can proc a bunch of Radiating Orbs as well, because you get that 2 radiant damage on all the orbs. So you can shoot them around at enemies. This is actually a pretty crazy build. I know this is more so a Radiating Orb style build than a Blade Dancer, but I wanted to provide some defensive abilities alongside it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments and the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll see you all in the next one.